Welcome to Adapt&Able, the podcast where we explore identity transformations of people, places, and the societies we shape. I'm your host, redefine, and in each episode, I speak with pioneers who understand that true transformation begins with how we see ourselves, what we value, and who we choose to become. Today, I have the great privilege of speaking with Kim Polman, whose work targets that exact point of transformation. She is the co-founder and chair of Reboot the Future, and importantly, the driving force behind a modern version of one of humanity's oldest moral principles: treat others and the planet as you would wish to be treated. Now, Kim has rephrased this golden rule as a living ethic for our time. Yes, it is about personal kindness, but the way I experience it is as an invitation for systemic courage. Today, Kim and I will explore the balance between values and identities, the fear of letting go, and what it takes to move from knowing to becoming. Kim, thank you for joining us. It's an absolute privilege having you here.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me.
When people ask what you do, what would you most want them to understand?
Well, what I would really like people to understand is that this golden rule, this ancient principle, is really, it's simple. We live in a complex world, but bringing this simple idea to the forefront of our thought can help us navigate the complexities. Also, it is universal. I've discovered that it's in every part of the world. It's in all religions. It is such a core component of being human that, we have this in common. So use it as a starting point for solving lots of our issues.
You're right. I too looked it up in terms of what was his origin. And you're right, it crosses all religions for centuries. But the point you've made that it is simple, and I agree with you, but I think it's deceptively simple. There's a huge amount of power in it. So how do you weave it into your work? How do you incorporate that golden rule in the work that you do?
It is simple to remember.
That's in today's overload is important.
Simple to remember, simple to share, and simple to understand. Yes, I understand the difficulty of living it. I feel like there's three things that are required to live this principle. The first is that we need to listen. We do have some common values, and we'll talk more about that we share. And we can assume that, if I like people who are generous, I should be generous as well, those kinds of things. But there's also difference in values. And so we need to listen to each other. The second thing is that it takes courage to listen to it. And we can talk more about that later too. But courage, because sometimes requires us to turn away from the paradigm that we're in. And then three, it requires action.
Absolutely.
So it's more than compassion. It's more than empathy. It's both of those combined. So to really live it, it requires action. It's not just standing on a podium and preaching it. It really needs to be lived.
Absolutely. And I very much like that first point that you've made where it begins with listening. Because I think we also live, at least in my experience, in a world where everybody's trying so hard to be heard that we don't take the time to listen. The notion of "and the planet" is an addition to that golden rule. Why was it important for you to add that qualifier?
Well, that came about because I started this in 2015 when the Paris Climate Agreement was passed, when the Sustainable Development Goals were passed by the UN. It was quite an incredible year. And then the Pope at the time, Francis, published his encyclical on climate change. I'm not Catholic, but I read that book.
Yes.
It's a very beautiful statement to the world about how we need to treat the planet better. And he changes the definition of the word dominion in the book of Genesis, that God gave man dominion over the earth, to stewardship.
Love that.
And
yes.
that word dominion always bothered me. And I thought, yes, thank you. Thank you to him for changing that and opening up our minds to our role, not as a dominating species, but as stewards of the earth. and all life. So that inspired me to add the planet into this golden rule principle.
And when did you rediscover the grounding power of this golden rule? I mean, it's been around, but I mean, you've really kind of harnessed it to, give it energy into our current time. What was that? Was it an aha moment, or was it a gradual awareness?
Yeah, there was an aha moment. I'd grew up with this. I'm a Christian, so I did grow up with this principle. But the aha moment really came when I was at the World Economic Forum. There was a session on, finding happiness, like what's the real source of happiness. And there were neuroscientists there who were giving this very long, complicated explanation with all sorts of charts and flow charts and chemical equations. And they were basically talking about the chemicals in your brain and how, the positive chemicals make you feel compassionate. And that's really what makes us happy. And I'm thinking, this sounds a lot like what my mother taught me. Then the second person was a Buddhist monk who was saying, well, actually, what they're talking about is an ancient principle. And of course, Buddhists understand very much about our brains, and that's why neuroscientists study Buddhist monks. And then the third speakers were therapists who were using this information, this knowledge, to develop programs to help change the brains of the most traumatized victims and the most hardened criminals through a very careful, slow process of changing the chemicals in their brains. And I'm thinking, this is old-fashioned redemption.
Okay, yes.
This is the golden rule.
Love that.
They're making it extremely complicated. And the people in the room were desperate. This was after a week of being at the World Economic Forum and hearing all the problems, hearing the solutions, but massively complex.
For simplicity.
And here they come, but they never really stated it. I said, okay, let's make this simple. I'm going to state this. And then I had the opportunity to help on my first book, Imaginal Cells, Visions of Transformation. And my partner and I on that book decided that could be the core component.
Grounding axis, yes. And I absolutely love it, because I agree with you. It's deceptively simple, but if you really stop and pause, it is profound. So, and that's definitely how I experienced that. I want to kind of ask, in your view, and kind of speaking about these world problems and your experience at the World Economic Forum, there's no doubt that we're facing a lot of crises. I mean, you name it, climate, war, inequalities, all these things. In your view, how urgent is it for us as societies to re-examine our values?
Anybody who doesn't see the urgency of it really kind of has their head in the sand. The world, the planet is crying out.
Yeah,
it's a question of balance. I feel like we've just lost balance in so many ways in our societies, in our economic system, in our educational system.
Absolutely.
Just
Almost
so much is out of balance. And but the planet itself is revolting, but also our human institutions,
Absolutely.
The UN, the educational system, capitalism, communism, all of these systems that we've developed over, well, especially in modern times, but also, modern times don't happen without the history, but it's out of balance. And so we need to find that balance.
It feels to me that we're in constant turbulence. It's constant discomfort in all of the spaces in which we're operating. So I agree with you. When I met you at Anthropy, and I confess that was the first time that I heard your version of the Golden Rule, I loved it because it felt to me, the instant that I heard it, as almost like a moral invitation to re-examine our values, and a shared moral invitation. But it felt very different to the sort of strongman sort of cultures in which I have been operating and that we've witnessed on global stages for the last couple of decades. How is your invitation being received, knowing that that's kind of still possibly a prevailing culture, and yet here is this invitation to examine our values? Are you being met with resistance, or are people receptive?
I mean, the people that are resisting don't really tell me. They just go on.
Don't confess outright.
But I get a lot of really positive feedback. I remember when we launched this in 2017 at the World Economic Forum, there were people in the audience. It was a group of about 50 people, 50 people, and they were shocked that someone would talk about this at the World Economic Forum back then.
Yes.
Second of all, I was in New York later doing the same thing, and someone there said, "Oh, this is an antidote to that president that just took office." So there was a yeah, okay, we get this. This is not what we're living right now. And of course, since then, it's the world. There's a lot of strong leadership out there that I believe to be misguided and taking people away from this principle, and it's not making the world a better place. It's not making people happier.
Not. Especially not in the long term.
Are we really happy fighting with each other? You know, having these battles between family members, between neighbors, between communities, between nations. No, nobody is happy. So why are we doing this?
Absolutely.
It's the only, we think we're really a smart species, but no other species fights at the same level that we do.
Not at all. Yeah.
So are we smart?
One of the things that I absolutely love about your work and resonated quite a lot with my way of thinking is that true transformation, really at the core of the root of the transformation, lies the stories that we tell and the values that we hold. What are at least some of the values that you think we should let go of in order to unlock a healthier future, a less confrontational, less competitive, a less exploitive future?
Well, me, myself, and I. And we should think more about we, ourselves, and us. Our educational system encourages us to be super competitive.
Yes, very much so.
And it starts there. And then, it's competitive in sports. I have a friend who was a football player in Italy, and we were discussing one time. I said, "Oh, it's so irritating when a football competition ends with these shootouts." What?
Oh yes, the kickouts or the penalty shootouts.
The penalty shootouts, and everybody agrees it's a rotten way where the teams are absolutely equal. I said, "Why can't you end a championship with a tie?"
Yeah,
and he said,
that would be novel.
No, you could never do that.
There has to be a winner and a loser.
There has to be a winner and a loser as a consequence.
I love that.
I think, why?
Yes.
Why?
I love
why
that.
Can we not
Yes.
have ties? Why can we not cooperate and build something together rather than competing against each other all the time? So that goes, it starts in school and it goes all the way through. So that's one thing. I think my really big key question that comes from the golden rule is that we need to ask ourselves all the time, am I being hurtful or helpful?
Yes.
Anything I do, whether it's to myself.
I was just going to add that, including to ourselves.
The people that I relate to.
Yes.
On a face-to-face level, or communicate with on social media or whatever, my circle, and then, of course, globally, because we have to understand that what we do really does have effects elsewhere. Of course
it does. Ripples out.
Yeah.
And much more so than we think.
Yeah.
Kim, as a placemaker, people quite often think that a lot of what I do is rearranging the physical aspects of an environment. And although that is not true, a lot of what we actually do is to work on the identities and the values of an ecosystem. And it is so important, actually more important than the technical environment. And in that, I describe to people the relationship between identity values, at least in my language, look at identity as as the structure, as kind of that notion of how I see myself, how I see my environment, and that the values are really the operating system that works on that hardware. And in essence, really, that they work so closely in tandem. How do you see the relationship between identity and value? How do you think about it? Is there a difference? Is it divorceable? Are they close cousins?
Yeah, definitely close cousins, if not siblings. Let's just take religion, for example, which gives us a set of values.
Yes.
And that gives us our identity. Let's take families. Families have values, and that gives us our identity.
Absolutely.
Our geography gives us our identity.
Couldn't agree with you more.
But that defines our values because we have to live within a system that maybe doesn't have as much water or has too much water, whether we have to share resources or compete against resources or, it defines our values and our identity. So, yeah, they're completely intertwined.
My earlier days of an investment banker, I kind of truly believe that if we solve the technical problem, we've solved the problem. And I initially overlooked this very important part. And then when these complex change programs didn't succeed, I wondered why. And upon deep reflection over years and years and years, learnt that no system changes unless the people within it begin to see themselves differently, shift their values, and begin to choose differently or behave differently. What's your view about that?
Oh, yeah, for sure. What we value, what we treasure is what we hold on to, what we strive for. So, but we have to recognize that we can change our values. If something's not working, if too many people are suffering, or the environment around me, the other animals, or the plant life is suffering, we need to ask ourselves, okay, is there something we're doing wrong that causes this suffering? It's important to be honest about that. There are people that work on these transitions at a city level. You, for example, with your salience. But I'm also thinking of Rob Hawkins, who wrote a manual for transition towns. And he had spent many years helping towns transition to a new set of values. It has to start with values. It has to start with all the different sectors of the town coming together and connecting. I have another friend, Barbara Bulk, who has been working at this city level as well in Romania, and bringing all parts of the society together over a period of at least 5 years, to understand one another and define where they want to go as a town. So it's possible to change. And I think we can get entrenched in our values. We can get entrenched in our identity. But there's an evolutionary process that is constantly going on.
Absolutely.
Society doesn't hold the same values.
Yes, of course.
And
I want to that's for me an area of change that I'm deeply interested in, and would love to stand still with you there for a moment. Why is it that we want to apply new technology, so we adapt new processes to the external, but we don't really, easily delve into changing our identities when it's necessary? What do you think might stand in the way?
Well, I think individuals feel disempowered.
Yes.
You think, oh, who am I? Well, I have no influence.
Yes.
I'm just a little person in this world.
Yes.
But every drop of the ocean is important.
Makes a difference. Yes. Yes.
The ocean is made up of drops of water. So you start taking the drops of water away, and the other thing is apathy. It's if you're in that frame of mind, you develop apathy. I think also this head in the sand thing.
Yes.
People don't really want to face it. I get that.
Absolutely. It's too overwhelming.
Like right now, it's just totally overwhelming.
Absolutely.
Change could be perceived as requiring sacrifice.
Love that. I absolutely love that.
And we don't like to sacrifice.
Absolutely. To that point of sacrifice, in a moment in one of the transformation programs that I worked, a community leader acknowledged to me, and it was quite an aha moment, that he was resisting the transformation strategy that he understood logically was necessary, but that he felt that letting go and shifting to that change meant shaming the past. And that felt that it was a criticism, a little bit to your point of sacrifice, which for me was quite an awakening to understand the emotional state that some people experience change by. And if he feels that a past is being shamed, of course he won't let go. So I definitely think that point of sacrifice is extremely true.
I'll come back to the shame in a second, but I want to add one more point about why it's hard to change. I think right now, as I mentioned before, a lot of strong leaders are giving hurtful messages, and we need to really question if that's the right message.
Yes.
If they would start giving kind, generous messages, let's all be kinder to each other. Let's be more tolerant. Let's stop fighting.
Yes.
People would change.
Yes.
They would stop
feeling judged or...
Yeah,
yes.
Exactly. So I think, I think that's important to bear in mind as well, why people are resistant to making a better world, that what I consider better, of course. On the shame thing, I'm very conscious that we cannot judge the past. I mean, shame is about something that has happened in the past, something that I've done or my collective society has done in the past. And while we can't condone it, we also should not be hindered by the shame. Shame to me points to guilt, which points to having done something wrong. And I think when you recognize that it was wrong, you can move on. You can say, okay, I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm not going to. Then it's fine. That's where transformation takes place. But you shouldn't let the shame or the guilt hinder you. And I don't think we can judge the past by today's standards. There's so many demands on us on how we do have to change our lives to make it a more sustainable world. We can't do everything.
Of course not. Yes.
And we don't have to do everything. We have to do something, what we can do. And it's not a sacrifice if there's a shift of values.
I fully agree. I personally, of course, relate. I hope people that listen to this message take that on board, because it was very painful for me to watch that some people wasn't excited about that future, but rather experienced it as shame, and to kind of think about tools of how, for those that unintentionally or unfortunately respond to it in that way, to give them emotional comfort that is not quite the case, that one can still have this notion of being proud of a legacy, because in a certain time that was deemed appropriate. It did achieve miraculous things that one could applaud, but that one should have the bravery, the courage that you spoke of so beautifully a few moments ago, have it to understand, well, that's no longer fit. And that the notion is, like you said, systems are dynamic, we are dynamic, and that we allow ourselves almost that grace to acknowledge when some things are no longer working.
Yeah.
And that it is okay and safe to move to a new system, a new way of doing, and to embrace that. I find that shame thing, I think, is where we will have to do some work to bring some of the laggers on board that emotionally feel unsafe in doing so, at least in my experience.
Yeah.
So I love those words of encouragement that you gave. What about fear? Because I think that's the other emotional response that have also, on a collective basis, on individual leaders, fear of giving up what do they know, giving up their fiefdom, giving up what they experience as a successful recipe, actually, to achieve what we have valued up until now as success in the world. Have you come across this interplay where fear actually stands in a way of moving forward, of embracing anew?
Fear always stands in the way. Because fear blocks our brain.
Yes, mine included.
Yeah,
often.
Definitely mine. And we have to manage that fear. Uncertainty is always uncomfortable.
Absolutely.
We do have to get used to living with uncertainty because we really don't know where the planet is going with this climate change. The extremes are bigger than they have been. We've always had extremes, but it's just so often nowadays.
Yes, and increasingly, yes.
Yeah. So I think, we have to get used to that uncertainty. There's different qualities that we need now in this day and age, that, like resilience. We need to develop resilience. We need to develop creativity. We need to think more systemically. So our educational system has to incorporate those things, and companies need to train people to think broader. We need to be more interdisciplinary. Everything's connected.
Absolutely.
We are all connected to each other. We're connected to all life on Earth. And so if we understand those connections, then we will be able to make better decisions that will be helpful to more people rather than just my own selfish.
Absolutely. Kim, any of those words you've used, I could discuss hours with you on each of that word about kind of thinking systemically, thinking holistically. And you also use that word resilience. And again, I use that in a lot of my work. And I was always kind of perplexed of what does that word really mean? And for a lot of people, when I ask that question, they kind of think immediately of that notion of bouncing back, quick recovery. And at least from my perspective, I think it's something more. I'm not excluding that, but I almost kind of see it as ability to be agile, to renew our values, renew our identities. How do you respond to when you kind of speak to we need to have more resilience? What does it mean to you?
Courage.
Yes. Simple.
It just requires courage and strength to stand up again. And then that open mind to say acceptance that there's a situation that you can't change.
Yes.
Right now. You can't get out of it, but you need to face it. And there's that old thing, what you can't change, you have to accept. And what you can change, get going.
I love that. I love that sort of simple word of courage. I think it's a simple, succinct way, which I think you're so good at, to kind of make it simple and keep it clear. I want to kind of jump a little bit to kind of this process of change. And in a lot of your work, you so beautifully refer to the metaphor of the caterpillar moving into the butterfly. And not just from an ecological perspective, but really kind of using it as a metaphor to speak to true transformation, right? The real transformation of of us as humans. Why is this metaphor so helpful for where humanity is at the moment?
Well, I think it's gives hope. The imaginal cell is the cell that holds the vision of the butterfly. It is already in the caterpillar, but is dormant. When the caterpillar, so there's quite a few metaphors in this whole story. So the caterpillar in his life eats and gorges and gets, huge. So it's, for me, that's the metaphor of how we are over-consuming in our world. At some point, it's too much. And he goes into his cocoon and starts breaking down. And there's this chaos inside. Well, that activates, miraculously, these imaginal cells. which
I love that.
and the different cells are represent different parts of the butterfly. They hold that DNA of the color or the wings or the eyes or the little antennas, the feet, etc. So they have different purposes. They're activated, but the old way of doing things, the caterpillar way, does not really like this new presence and actually starts attacking this new presence. Well, the imaginal cells, the correct biological pronunciation is imaginal cells, but I say imaginal cells because it also represents imagination. So the imaginal cells emit a common frequency and find each other and cluster.
I love that. I
And
really
then
love that.
that the old way gives up, and in fact, the caterpillar becomes the food.
Yeah, absolutely.
For the butterfly. So then that allows this beautiful butterfly to emerge. So that chaos for me is representative of what's going on now.
I think it is so perfect.
Just the world is just so chaotic right now.
Absolutely.
But the innate cell of the imaginal cell is this new vision. And there are a lot of people in the world that have a new vision for the world. So like Kate Raworth, for example, with her donut economy, or Rob Hawken with his transition towns.
Yes.
I mean, many people have new visions. And so we actually are emitting a common frequency. For me, that's the golden rule.
Speak my language. It's so beautiful.
Yeah, that's the golden rule. So we find each other. It just happens. Mm-hmm. We just find each other. And so we collect and we will move towards this new vision. It is an evolutionary process. And I think if you read history, you find out how barbaric humans have been.
My husband keeps reminding me of that. He's a historian, so I know. It's shocking sometimes what he shares.
Yeah,
unfortunately.
What we have done to each other in the past. And, unfortunately, some people are still doing that kind of barbaric thing. But most people move on and are evolving and becoming kinder and more gentle.
I definitely feel that shift is happening too.
Yeah.
And there's some things that I want to ask about that metaphor, but just before you do, because me having been in kind of quite harder environments, I've learned to hide the softer way of expressing things. And it's reawakening now. It's taken a long time to unlearn that. Are you being challenged with this being incredibly soft for the world today? Because again, I absolutely relate to it. And I think it is so appropriate to describe it and so relatable. But are you in this language somewhere being dismissed by people that say that it's not technical enough, it's not hard enough, it's not firm enough? How are people responding to this? Because it is so apt.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so it's not just me.
No.
Okay,
no.
I just want to be sure.
For sure.
And I hope you persevere.
Some people love it and some people don't. And all I do is plant the seed and
trust.
Sometimes it will fall on good soil and sometimes it won't.
Yes.
And that's, I hope that it inspires.
Words.
And sometimes, someone might remember a year later or 2 years later, oh yeah, maybe this is helpful if I think about this golden rule a bit more. Other people respond right away and say, wow, I've been really thinking about this and how I live my life, and it's helped me ask a lot of questions. Am I being hurtful or helpful?
Yeah.
Why am I doing what I'm doing? What am I doing? How am I doing it?
Even the simplicity of that why.
How am I doing it?
Coming back to your metaphor, the part that I absolutely loved in how you articulated it is that notion of where you kind of describe where that fat, overeaten caterpillar is now disintegrating. So the old is disintegrating and the new is slowly taking shape. And then we're in this battle of what is increasingly, I think, in layman's terms being referred to as the messy middle, right? Now that's never quick, right? This period of chaos feels like it could last decades. Hopefully not hopefully many more. But how do we support people through this messy middle where the new is not yet, that tipping points have not yet fully taken shape and the old is not yet fully disintegrated? How can we support people in that messy middle bit?
Yeah, it's tricky because in the chaos, a lot of people will be hurting.
Absolutely.
And we don't know who and when. I think we have some idea of the more fragile parts of our society. Those of us who are privileged, I think, have the responsibility to keep hopeful, keep strong, and keep finding solutions, and also helping them
Yes.
in their communities, finding solutions, empowering them to find their own solutions. I think
I fully agree with
I
that.
think one thing that would help people is becoming involved in whatever part of the transition they can
Yes.
help
Yes.
with.
However small.
Everybody has the capacity to be creative
I agree.
and to help. And I think, 99% of humanity wants to help.
Yes, absolutely. I'd also love that. I mean, it's quite an awakening point that you make there, that also we don't know who's struggling, because there's obviously marginalized groups that's easy to identify, like you've implied. But I think a lot of people are also not speaking out, that are hurting, that are struggling with that messy bit, and to perhaps also create platforms on which people feel comfortable to share that pain, that it's no longer, again, coming to that point of it's not shameful, it's not a bad thing, it doesn't mean you're weak, it doesn't mean anything negative to admit, because the more we share about that struggle, the more we might learn and, kind of group to help that transition. So I agree, there's more people in that messy middle that who would like, that's not really admitting it. And that for me is also a missed opportunity. We're not talking enough about that. Not as a way to hide, not as victimhood, but to how do we through that let go so that more tipping points can happen. At least, that is my hope. You earlier also in your metaphor referred to these imaginal cells that hold the vision, which again, it almost joyful tears to my mind in terms of the hope that holds. And you implied that humans have imaginal cells. Is that the case? And if so, how do we ignite more of these cells? Can we ignite it faster so that, again, we can bring these connection points and almost kind of this transformation? I know one shouldn't hurry it because it has to run its course, but again, one wants to almost encourage that more tipping points are reached. Tell us more about the imaginal cells in humans, if they exist, or these frequency points you so beautifully describe.
Yeah, so the imaginal cell is equals the compassionate part of the human being, the generous gene, and we do have a choice.
Absolutely.
Are we going to follow our generous gene or our selfish gene? Our amygdala, or
Yes.
the rational, compassionate part of our brain. So we have that choice. And I mean, sometimes we need the amygdala, we need the self, because if we're run out in the street and a car comes, we need to react and get out of the way. That's to save us. It's a survival instinct, but it also acts up when we're angry, and so and then we might just punch somebody in the face or throw something or whatever. Yes. And so, that will never help answer. That will never help solve the situation. So we need to get control of that. And so we have that choice. Are we going to stay calm, count to 10, deactivate the amygdala, and let ourselves get back into our rational, where we live most of the time?
Yes.
I still believe that humans live it's like nature wants to be in harmony. Our bodies want to be healthy. Our we want to be healthy. And so I feel like just let that natural process go, and the more we can calm down and open our thought, we find those answers.
what I'm hearing is almost to kind of have the wisdom to just take a brief pause,
Yeah.
to be able to make that choice. Because I think quite of us become so reactionary in the environment that we don't take that moment to kind of just choose. Am I taking count to 10? Or is it Mel Robbins that say kind of, that the kind of the 5-second rule, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and only in that moment. So I fully agree with you. You use the metaphor about the butterfly. In my work, at least the identity transformation part of it, I draw on the nested doll metaphor. And I use it to describe to people the layers of identity, which you earlier also so beautifully described as me, the I am, the individual being the smallest doll. And then the slightly bigger doll represents the family identity, close, slightly broader family, the even bigger doll, then the social circles or professional circles and realms in which we move, church, other interests we might have, and then the larger doll representing the biggest ecosystems of society in which we operate. And it's just an easy way for me to kind of explain to people the levels of identity and how they interrelate and all actually interact. My question to you would be is, if we want to work towards a better future, at which of these levels do you think we need to change identities first? Where do we start shifting identities in those layers?
We have to change them all. We have to.
Please, you answered that is my view. Not all of the parts want to, and it's not easy to influence that.
For me, it's a recognition. I have to start with myself. I need to take care of myself.
Absolutely.
That's for sure. And, for some that might be, eating foods that are changed from eating unhealthy foods to healthy foods so that your body can actually function properly. It might be getting away from your screen and seeing people face to face, which is so much more satisfying.
Absolutely.
Really, it feeds that compassionate part of you much
I
better.
fully agree.
It might be learning how to be less judgmental about yourself, not so critical of yourself, feeling more self-confident, whatever it is, take care of yourself. Then once you recognize your own needs, you can be more sensitive to other people's needs because,
yours are being met.
They probably have the same needs in different quantities. So then the practice on the immediate surroundings. So, for example, a very simple one is, I do not like to be shouted at.
Yes.
So I should commit to not shouting to anyone. Very simple.
Yes.
I like people,
your golden rule in practice.
Exactly.
Do unto others as you want to be treated.
I love it when people smile at me. And then I should smile.
Reciprocate.
First.
Yeah.
Hey, who's going to do it first?
Yeah, but who's going to bend the knee? Yeah.
So how many family disputes go on and on and on because no one has the courage to be the first?
I agree.
So to ask for forgiveness or to forgive. Usually it's both ways. Mm-hmm. You have to do both. So that's the second layer. The third layer then is, let's say professional life. How do you treat your colleagues? And then there's this question of what am I doing? How am I doing it? And why am I doing it? Why am I spending 8 hours or whatever hours a day doing this work? Is it being helpful? Is it being hurtful to any one person or the planet? So at a global level, we all have to ask ourselves, what are we doing? Why are we doing it?
Challenge ourselves.
And
Absolutely.
How are we doing it? And what is the effect on others?
I love that because I think in that you speak to agency at each level.
Yeah.
Because quite often in the towns and the cities or regions that I need to do transformation work, a lot of the language that I get is, but they should, the government must. The private sector, the mine, whichever the driving force of the private sector in that space might be, or even if I do more of the sort of coaching work, people quite often say my father should, my mother should, and again, this personal agency is, I think, something that we really need to pay attention to and not anymore outsource that. But the true shifts will begin to happen if you take some responsibility, exactly as you've described. What can I do? What can I take control of? And that change stems from the bottom up and the top down. It's not just the others should. You, in your book, also describe visionaries of people that are already living this change, right? What characteristics do you see is common across these visionaries? And yes, how does one connect them? What is it about them that make them visionaries?
Yeah, I think they have courage. They're willing to take risks. They are open-minded, collaborative. They don't necessarily need the credit themselves, but they're really trying to solve something together with people. They don't know necessarily all the answers.
Of course.
They don't know everything, but they
Yes.
are very willing to ask an expert to be part of it. They are interdisciplinary, and you mentioned cynicism before in your list of questions to me. I don't think visionaries can be cynical. Being cynical is a bit like being fearful.
Yes.
It blocks you.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't think a visionary, I mean, there's some people I know that have been spending decades and decades and decades talking about this stuff. And like I was saying before, I feel like the universe brings visionaries together. I believe love attracts love. Hate
It's that notion of
attracts hate.
frequency. Absolutely.
And so what kind of people do I want to be around? So they find each other.
You also used that nested language earlier, which I absolutely agree with, and also uses the I, the we, the us. And it feels to me, the way that you describe it, that these visionaries have moved beyond the I to lead into the we and the us.
Yeah.
And again, not from a pure socialist perspective, it's still from a very constructive, pragmatic perspective of what is common sense, but it includes that we and that us. It's no longer just the I. I win, I succeed, I perform, I win, as we spoke about earlier. But I, for me, that's kind of some of how I also draw distinction to whom I, at the moment, relate better to what I might have. You know, I don't want to shame the investment banking culture, but you know, when I was there 20 years ago, it was very much the individual performer that was celebrated. So I love your list, and I would definitely look at it like that.
Yeah, I think there's also a difference between the East and the West.
Yeah, the
So
deep
I think
philosophies, yes.
I think of the Greek vases and how they, the hero and the warrior and those beautiful orange and black vases
Yes.
that honor the perfect body, the perfect performer, the perfect whatever. And we in our Western society are very individualistic.
Absolutely.
It's about my own
me.
personal
Yes.
success and ability to outshine everyone else. In the East, it's more, from what I understand about Confucianism, for example, is that you want to do your best, but it's not for yourself, it's for
The collective.
the collective.
Absolutely.
Exactly. And I think that is also part of indigenous cultures.
Absolutely.
So
I
when
agree.
they would go out, when the men would go out and hunt, it wasn't the meat for
Just one
the
person
main
or
one
one
who
family.
actually did the kill,
Yeah.
but it was a team effort to get the lion. But they brought the meat back for the whole community. And I think, we've gotten so caught up in our personal pleasure, desire to satisfy our pleasure.
And the ease with which to do that.
Yeah. And
Fully
have
agree.
possessions for ourselves and more. It's more and more. We're taught that more and more advertising industries taught us more and more and
Yes.
more, bigger and bigger, better and better. And has that really been helpful? Has that really brought happiness?
Not at all.
Yeah.
I want to kind of shift us just before we go to the more reflection part of our discussion around, you kind of made reference earlier that you make use of this imagination, the imagination of what can be in your work. Tell me more about that. Why is it so important that we include imagination in shaping our new futures, the ones that we also desire?
Yeah, well, what artist can create without having an imagination?
No.
What author can write a book without an imagination? What composer can write a symphony without an imagination? So we cannot have a future if we don't imagine it.
Exactly.
Where do we want to go? What do I want in my neighborhood? Just take it at a very small, where I live. What do I want to have friendly relations with my neighbors? Do I want to know my neighbors?
Yes.
I want to connect with them? How do I want to be seen in that neighborhood as being a positive person or
Yes.
negative one or whatever?
I love that, because I guess in that also lies hope, and it lies creativity. And it's not all, because I also kind of think a lot of people are at the moment overloaded and overwhelmed what might feel like doom and gloom, like everything's negative. And I think that imagination part that you bring in your world brings light into it again, brings, that activates the heart, it activates the creativity. And I kind of think that people should not forget that. It's not all about undoing the past and judgment and defend and criticize. It is, because if we're free to choose, we could dream up really beautiful things of how we can reconnect or rewire systems. And for me, that's immensely hopeful. And I hope that people hear that in your work, that it's not all about, kind of talking about a past we need to move away from, but it's this, what are we working towards? And that's light. That's encouraging. That's exciting, But I understand not all are there yet. And I just want to compliment you on being quite deliberate to add that to your language so that people don't forget that accidentally in this messy middle period that we are, that can feel heavy.
Yeah. I mean, it's a choice.
Yes.
Bad things happen.
Of course.
But we have a choice how we're going to deal with it. We can let it crush us.
Yes.
Or we can say, no, I can do something about this.
Yes.
I can rise out. I can figure something out here. And then I think, we need to feel empowered to be able to make that choice.
My second last question to you, Kim, is like, if we could truly, and I mean truly, imagine a world in which we are treating others and the planet with kindness. Mm-hmm. In 20 years from now, what would you imagine are the identities we would appreciate, that we would celebrate?
I would love for people to understand that their identity is not defined by our nationality.
I agree.
By our religion, by our family, but actually how good we are in those common values.
I love that.
And how tolerant and open we are to the differing values. There's a lot of things that we judge people on that really we shouldn't be judging. What kind of clothes they wear, or whether they wear a scarf or not,
yes.
or there's just a lot of things like that. So I think, and then to develop those new character traits that I was mentioning before, of resilience, creativity, personal responsibility, awareness of our rights, but also our responsibility, awareness of self, and fairness, understanding the effect that we have on others. That would be my wish as to how we would identify ourselves.
I very much like that one. The one that immediately drew to me, that felt a little bit fresh in that. I mean, there's so many of those things that's rich, but that one is that we're aware of our rights, but also our responsibility. Because again, it feels to me the pendulum has swung a little bit at the moment to rights aware, but not responsibility aware.
Yeah.
And, so the kind of want but not the give. And I hope that your articulation of that alongside those others also step into maturity and evolve.
It is, one more thing on this
Yeah,
point.
sure.
It is absolutely right that more people have a voice that have not had a voice.
Of course, absolutely.
But they should also not slip into the risk of being self-righteous.
I agree. Absolutely agree. Exactly that.
It's about balance.
I was just going to say it. I kind of think that story of Goldilocks and that balance. It's not too hard, not too cold, just right. And it's tough to get to that points of balance. And I actually would love to have a conversation with just that of what does balance mean in our world at the moment, because I think that in itself is something that we're in a chaotic state about and unsure about, because what we thought is balance is now shaking on every seam. And how do we redefine what good balance feels like and looks like?
Right. So I have a second book called Values for Life Economy, and there's 10 values, and my absolute favorite one is the balance one. And there's quite within that description, there's a lot of examples of what we can strive for to have more balance. Rural, city. I mean, if we look at nature as a living system, there's a lot of inspiration in natural systems that can help guide us to get this sense of balance better.
I fully agree with you, because the world is out of balance. We are out of balance. And how do we retain that? So I look forward to reading that book. I confess I've not yet read it. I tried to find it, but it wasn't so easy. So I'll make sure I can find a copy of that. So which is really important. So Kim, my final question is, if you could reframe the golden rule as a question, inviting people on self-reflection rather than an invitation, what would that question be? What question do you want to leave with our audience?
Oh, well, there are infinite possibilities for the golden rule. That's another beautiful thing about it, because you can say it in so many ways. I remember going to the toilet one time, a public toilet, and it said, "Please leave the toilet the way you would like to have found it."
Of course. As simple as that.
It's totally adaptable to any situation. So then that simple question is, how do I want to be treated? How do I want to find things? I think a thing I thought about recently was this relationship between renter and landlord. It is so fraught with problems nowadays.
It is.
But it is a perfect symbiotic relationship. And if renters could find a way to be more responsible as if they own the place, and if landlords could be more responsible to treat, to take care of a place the way as if they're living in it, we'd have a much better
outcome. It's again so simple. Kim, where do people find out more about your work? Where do they go to get in touch with you? Where do they find you?
Well, I have an organization called Reboot the Future. Our website is rebootthefuture.org, and it explains what we do. We have some little films on there that are quite enlightening, and some resources, educational materials for teachers. There's a link to another website that has educational materials that teachers can download that give them little lesson plans on current events or various topics. And then we offer a number of services. And then there's access to our books as well, linked to the 2 books I mentioned.
And I can definitely recommend reading Imaginal Cells. So a fantastic read, especially for people in this field. So very encouraging. Kim, thank you so, so much for joining us today. I will still look at Anthropy as you being my diamond from that event. And yes, I hope that I was emitting the right frequency to attract a like-minded person, because I so thoroughly enjoyed meeting you and our discussion today. So thank you for sharing so freely. And yes, I think you're the epitome of your own golden rule. quiet power, but a forceful power nonetheless. And yes, I applaud you for what you do.
Well, thank you very, very much for having me. I've enjoyed this immensely.
Thank you, Kim.